Okay, very good. So remember, one of the qualities of right speech is speaking at the right time. That's one of the things you always find is in trying to do discussions on Dhamma and so on, sometimes it's difficult to get people started, and then once they're started, it's difficult to get them to stop. So anyway, so that was a very good discussion. Hope everyone enjoyed that. We don't have too much to add right here at the end, but just to summarise a few points that we've been over. First of all, the idea of karma in Buddhism, karma especially ethical action or ethical choice, and as something which is not determined and not fixed, but something which is constantly being performed, or being performed whenever you make a meaningful choice. So the basic idea in Buddhism is that those good actions lead to good results. Usually we can't figure out all the details of that. We can see it sometimes, but often we can't see it. It's not necessarily easy to see when this has good results or not. I don't know if anybody remembers Australia, You're Standing in It? Do you remember? Any remembers? Yes. Classic Australian comedy series from the 80s. See, moral lessons I still remember. And one of the best ones on there was Brain Space with Tim and Debbie. Anyone remember Brain Space with Tim and Debbie? Yes. And Tim and Debbie were these kind of supposedly hip alternative types who were perhaps not so well endowed with brain space as they thought they were. And they were discussing this very point that they were saying, Debbie was saying, money doesn't bring you happiness. And then Tim was saying, well, actually, on my way to the studio this evening, I passed this guy driving a Mercedes, and we stopped next to him at the traffic lights, and he looked pretty happy, actually. And Debbie said, he wasn't really, it was just a show. And Tim saying, well, I don't know, his boat was really big and he's had a beautiful wife and he looked pretty happy to me. So sometimes it's not obvious, this relationship. We can recognise that it exists, but it plays itself out in very complex ways. One of the stories we heard during our discussion group was from Ananda, talking about an act of kindness that he'd done many years ago when he'd helped somebody who'd been very sick, and he'd helped to organise transport for them to the hospital and so on. And then recently he himself was in hospital, and then he remembered this. And it brought back that happiness from such a long time ago. And I think this is one of those things which really shows the difference between that happiness which comes from doing what is good and the happiness that comes from sense pleasures, right? You imagine 30 years ago, what did you have for dinner? I'm sure you had some nice dinners. Where are they? I'm sure you had some nice holidays or nice experiences or went to see a movie or whatever it was, and you enjoyed it and had happiness then. And that's just gone. That's just ashes. It's meaningless, right, in the scheme of things. All you can do with that kind of happiness is just keep doing more of it again and again and again and again. And if you keep eating good meals again and again and again, you get fat. And if you keep drinking a good drink again and again and again, you become an alcoholic. And all of those things, they give you just a little bit of happiness, and if you keep doing it, the end result is it brings more suffering than happiness. Whereas the happiness that comes from doing good is something that it might seem like nothing at the time. And we often do a lot of good things and we don't remember it. We don't think of it. We tend to dismiss it. That wasn't important. Sometimes people will offer dana and then they'll say, it was just some leftovers that I had. This is very kind of, certainly in the Western cultures is what people say. I had too many loaves of bread, so, have some bread. And so they're kind of diminishing this kind of idea that they've done something actually good and actually really worthwhile. So don't be afraid to acknowledge that happiness and to reflect on it and rejoice with it, and to acknowledge that you've done something good. This is the point of the Silanusati, the meditation which we recommended for the preparation. And hopefully you all got something out of that meditation as well. Remembering what it is that you've done good and bringing that happiness to mind. Yeah? It doesn't happen automatically. It happens when you make that effort. Not remembering all the mistakes you've made. Right? We always made mistakes. We always know when we've made a mistake, right? The hard thing is forgetting it. Yeah? The important thing is to remember those good things that we've done. Don't take them for granted. Those are the things that are really important. Those are the things that are really powerful. Those are the things, ultimately, which will lead us to Nibbana. Yeah? So we should never take those good things that we do for granted. We shouldn't feel guilty about them, right? This is something sometimes people do. I've done a good thing, but then I was very attached to it. I'm very conceited because I did good, and now I'm a bad person because I'm attached to the good thing that I did. Well, get over it, all right? You're not enlightened, okay? So you're going to feel attached to things. So what, all right? But you just do what's good anyway. And it's the doing of what is good which is what helps you to overcome those attachments, okay? Not beating yourself up because you're not enlightened yet, all right? So you do what is good. Get attached to it, that's all right. But then as you go on, you just know that. You reflect on it. Okay, oh, this is what's happening. The ego's coming in. Never mind. Keep on doing what's good, and gradually you'll let go of that sense of ego, and the sense of what good that you're doing will become more and more powerful. So that's all I wanted to say for summing up for today. Ajahn Brahmada, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Okay. I can use this one. Okay, that works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can people hear that? Yeah? Okay.
Keep it close.
I certainly agree with that. I think this whole idea of reflecting on one's goodness certainly is very important. And I think one of the things that often happens is that you feel discouraged because you think about your goodness, no happiness arises. And often the reason why the happiness doesn't arise is because you're not ready yet to actually receive the happiness from that goodness. And that's what I was talking about before. The idea is that any act you do, whether it's bad or whether it's a good act, it actually fits into a whole web of all the other things you do in life. So once you start to purify yourself, and as you go through life, you become more pure, you become a better person. Suddenly there comes a time, maybe 5 years down the line, and then you remember that act that you did 5 years ago. And the reason why you can certainly now remember that act you did 5 years ago is because now you have reached a stage of purification where your mind is actually able to enjoy that. It actually has enough goodness inside of yourself to actually be able to reflect on that in the right way. So the goodness is never wasted. It's just a matter of giving it time and waiting for the time for these things to ripen. And then all of the things you did in the past come back to you. And then you feel the joy. Then you feel the happiness. So you just have to keep building. And these things happen in the course of things. So this is one just a small point I want to add to what Bhante Sujata was mentioning. Another thing that I think we talked about a little bit in our discussion group, which I think is a fascinating thing, is one thing that I often have used myself in my own life, and that is to never make any decision. Decisions are always ethical in one way or another, right? So never make a decision when you are under the sway of defilements. So sometimes you're in the monastery, you think, oh, okay, I've had enough of this monastery, can't stand it any longer. You get upset by something, right? There's always things that upset you in life. That's just the way things are. And then that is usually the wrong time to make a decision. If you make a decision when you are upset, when you are full of desires, when you are confused, when the mind is clouded, when everything is kind of uncertain and kind of, you can't see straight for your life, that is the time you should not make a decision. You should wait. If you want to make a decision about anything, which monastery you should live in, who you should choose as your teacher, which job you should have, anything, wait till you have clarity. Procrastinate. Wait till clarity arrives. Then you can make a decision. And then usually you will make very good decisions in life. Too many people do spontaneous things that then they regret later on. If you're going to do something spontaneous, do it only if it is definitely a good thing. Like a spontaneous act of charity, a spontaneous kind word, a spontaneous kind act or whatever, a spontaneous thought of metta. That is the kind of spontaneous action you should do. Otherwise, wait till you have clarity. Otherwise, you make all kind of silly mistakes in life. I reckon that's how I tend to live myself anyway. Okay, that was really all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't actually really expand on that particular topic. I should have said more about that, because this was one of the areas where I was talking about how our modern view or late Buddhism is different from early Buddhism, and how late Buddhism, everything is referred back to karma. That was my karma, I had a car accident, etc. So that is right. But the way the sutras talk about this is not in terms of niyamas. The idea of niyamas, like natural laws of chitta niyama, kamma niyama, etc. This is actually a commentarial notion. It doesn't talk about things in that way in the sutras. What the sutras say is much more practical, much more down to earth. The sutras say, okay, karma is one thing that is, what leads to problems in this life. Another one is, what does it say? It's like the seasons, the change of the seasons, right? It gets cold. Okay, so you feel cold. That's one thing. It's pretty practical and down to earth. And this is what I like about the Buddha's teaching. Often it's very down to earth. It's not kind of, in some kind of cloud, high clouded realm. So you have the change of the seasons. You have it talks about the change in the bodily humors, which basically means illness, right? The body changes, and you get illnesses as a consequence of that. So you get illnesses. It's human. You got a body, you're going to get illnesses. Simple as that. It talks about stumbling. You have an accident. It talks about accidents in there. Again, this is part of human life. You have accidents. You trip on your way back to the monastery or whatever. That's life. It's not because you got bad karma, it's because there was a root in the wrong place or whatever. And etc., etc. They're very practical things. And from that, you get the general idea that karma is only one among all these other things. And all these other things are the things that you can expect as a human being, whatever that is. One of the interesting things is that, the idea about life, long life or short life, is short life always due to bad karma in the past? Well, if you remember a few years ago in 2004, I think it was, when we had the great tsunami in that devastated large parts of Sumatra and Sri Lanka and everywhere. People often say, oh, this is due to the past karma. 150,000 people died. Whole villages were wiped out. Is it natural to think that every person in that village died because of bad karma? Does that make any sense? How come all these people were kind of conglomerated there, born into the same village, and then were wiped out because of bad karma? And it doesn't make any sense intuitively. And if you look carefully about what the suttas say about karma, what they actually say is that if you have done something bad, if you have killed in a past life, and you get reborn as a human, then you can expect short life. It does not say that short life is necessarily a consequence of having killed in the past. Sometimes short life probably is a result of having been born a human. If you have been born as a human being, sometimes if you are careless, if you were born in the wrong place, whatever reason, you can expect short life. So it's not, the sutras do not say that these things always happen as a consequence of karma. So it is like you take a statement in the suttas, and if you look at it carefully, it actually says something very different from how it is interpreted in many, many places, traditionally.
Okay, so unless there's any more questions, we might just wrap up there. And one thing I might just mention is we didn't provide any feedback options for this course, but if anybody wants to give some feedback for it, then we'd really appreciate that. Then they could just send that to the Buddhist Society, and then they'll forward that on to us. So that would be really appreciated both for us and for the Buddhist Society to have some feedback about what people thought of the course, whether you liked it or didn't like it, and whether you thought that Calvin and Hobbes was appropriate, or we should have Gary Larson instead, or whatever kinds of choices that we should be making. And that would be good. Okay, so let's wrap up the workshop on ethics, and we look forward to next month talking about samadhi. Very good. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.